Under the heavy quiet of the setting sun, the ranch spread across the horizon like a forgotten kingdom. Dust drifted in slow, lazy swirls around the corral fence, glowing amber in the last light. The day had been long, too long, and the silence that settled over the land now felt like the calm after a storm. Eli McGraw stood by the fence post, one boot pressed against the bottom rail, his hat low over his brow. He wasn't sure what kind of man he looked like anymore, a savior or a fool. Behind him, the sound of hesitant footsteps disturbed the stillness. They were light, unsteady. The kind of footsteps that came from someone not yet used to freedom. He didn't turn immediately, but he knew it was her. Lila. She stopped a few feet behind him. He could almost feel her uncertainty pressing against his back. Her voice came out rough, quiet, the kind of tone that trembled even when someone tried to make it firm. "You've paid for me, just do it." The words hit him like a strike of lightning, sharp and wrong. He turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers. Lila stood in the shadow of the barn, her hands clasped in front of her like she was holding herself together. Her dress was torn from the day's chaos, dirt smudged along her arms and face. Her dark hair fell loose, wild from the wind. She looked fragile, but her gaze burned with defiance, a spark of fight that hadn't been completely beaten out of her. Eli didn't speak at first. He just watched her, the air thick between them. Then, finally, he said, "That's not why I paid, Lila." Her shoulders stiffened, disbelief flickering across her face. "Then why?" "Men don't throw down money at an auction out of kindness." He took a step closer, but careful, like he was approaching a spooked horse. "You were up there, tied like property. I couldn't stand by and watch that happen." Her lips pressed tight, trembling with something caught between anger and sorrow. "And now what? You think I'm supposed to thank you? You think saving me makes you better than the rest of them?" He shook his head. "No, it doesn't make me better. It just means I couldn't walk away." She laughed then, a bitter, broken sound that didn't suit someone as young as she was. "That before he proves otherwise." The words stung, but Eli didn't let it show. He'd heard the same distrust in her tone that he'd seen in the eyes of wild mustangs before they'd learned the touch of a kind hand. "You've got reason to doubt," he said softly. "But I didn't buy you to own you. I bought your freedom." She stared at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable, then turned her head aside. "Freedom," she whispered. "That's a word folks like to throw around, but they don't mean it." Eli exhaled slowly, the sound mingling with the sigh of the evening wind. The sky was burning itself into deeper colors, orange bleeding into purple, the first stars trembling at the edges. He walked past her to the stable door, pushing it open. The smell of hay and horses drifted out, warm and grounding. Inside, one of his mares whickered softly, ears twitching toward him. He reached for a handful of oats and fed her, the motion steady and slow. He didn't look at Lila when he spoke again. "You've got a place to sleep in the loft. It's clean, ain't much, but it's yours tonight." There was no answer at first, only the creak of old boards as she lingered outside. Then, in a voice that seemed smaller than before, she said, "You really don't expect anything?" He turned, his eyes meeting hers through the shadowed doorway. "No, not a thing." The disbelief in her face deepened. Men always expect something, especially when money's involved. Eli dropped the empty feed tin on the shelf and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Then maybe I'm not like most men." She stepped closer, her bare feet stirring dust on the wooden floor. The lantern light caught her face now, revealing the bruises near her collarbone, the faint red marks on her wrists. He saw her swallow hard, the defensive fire in her eyes dimming to something more fragile. "You could have let me go," she murmured. "You didn't have to interfere." "I know," he said. "But I couldn't just watch them take you. You looked like you were praying for someone to stop it." She bit her lip, glancing away. "Maybe I was. Maybe I just didn't think it'd be someone like you. Someone like me. A man with eyes like that. Too sharp, too serious, like you've seen things you don't talk about." Eli gave a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Maybe I have." He took off his hat, ran a hand through his hair, and set it aside. "But I've seen enough to know that nobody deserves to be treated like that." She stared at him for a long time, the barn quiet except for the soft sounds of horses shifting in their stalls. When she spoke again, her voice trembled slightly. "If you didn't buy me for yourself, then why risk your neck? You could have angered the wrong people. Those men don't forget easy." Eli shrugged. "I can handle them." Her eyes softened just a fraction. "You talk like you're not afraid of anything." Fear's just another tool, he said. You use it, or it uses you. Lila tilted her head, studying him. You're a strange man, Eli McGraw. He smiled faintly. I've been called worse. The silence that followed wasn't as heavy this time. She looked around the barn, then up toward the loft ladder. You said I can sleep up there. He nodded. You'll find blankets and some bread. Fresh water in the barrel near the door. She started toward the ladder but stopped halfway, turning back to him. You really mean it, don't you? You'll just let me stay. I will, he said simply. For as long as you want. Something in his tone made her chest tighten. There was no hint of false promise, no hunger hidden behind his words. Just calm certainty. Her hands twisted in the fabric of her skirt. I don't know what to do with that kind of kindness. Eli looked up at her, his expression gentle but steady. You don't have to do anything with it. Just rest. Tomorrow's another day. She climbed the ladder, her movements slow, as if every rung carried a memory of the life she'd been forced to live. When she reached the top, she turned back and watched him for a moment. The rancher was lighting another lantern, the glow spilling across his weathered features. He didn't look at her, didn't follow her with his eyes, didn't expect anything. He simply went about his work, checking on the horses, fixing a broken latch, quiet as the night settling over the land. Up in the loft, Lila sat on the edge of the blanket-covered hay and stared at her hands. The faint tremor in her fingers wouldn't stop. For the first time in years, she wasn't chained by command or fear. And yet, she didn't know how to feel free. Below, Eli finished his chores, then leaned against a post, his gaze drifting toward the open door where the moonlight spilled in. He thought about her words, about how easily they came, born from pain. You've paid for me, just do it. He knew she didn't understand that sometimes, saving someone wasn't about possession, it was about giving them back what had been stolen. He stayed there for a long while, listening to the soft hum of the night, the crickets, the rustle of hay, the distant cry of a coyote. Then he took his bedroll and laid it near the stable wall, far from the loft, giving her space. He didn't want her to think for even a second that he'd bought her for anything else. Hours passed. The moon climbed higher, pale and cold above the plains. The air grew cooler, the quiet deeper. Then, from above, a soft voice broke the stillness. Eli. He lifted his head. Yeah, there was a pause, long enough for him to think she'd changed her mind about speaking. Then she said, I thought I'd never meet a man who'd help without wanting something back. He smiled faintly in the dark. Maybe that's because most men don't know what it means to lose everything. I do. Her voice drifted down, softer now. What did you lose? He stared at the ceiling beams for a moment before answering. Someone I cared about. Years ago. She needed help too, but I didn't get there in time. Silence again. Then a whisper, barely audible. I'm sorry. Don't be, he said quietly. You being here, maybe it's a chance to do something right for once. Lila didn't reply after that, but he could hear her shift in the hay, settling down, and a few moments later, her breathing evened out. Eli lay back, his eyes open to the dark. The wind outside rattled the stable door, carrying with it the scent of rain and sagebrush. He thought about what tomorrow would bring, how the townsfolk would talk, how the men from the auction might come looking for trouble. But he didn't care. For the first time in a long while, he felt certain about something. He hadn't saved her to fill the emptiness in himself. He'd done it because it was right. Because she deserved to see that not every man who reached for her wanted to take something away. When dawn finally broke over the horizon, streaking the land in soft gold, Lila woke to the sound of roosters and the faint clatter of dishes below. She climbed down the ladder, blinking against the light. Eli was already up, setting 2 tin plates on the table near the barn door, one for her, one for himself. She hesitated before sitting. You didn't have to make breakfast. He shrugged. Habit. Hard to eat alone after so many years. They ate in silence at first, the only sound the creak of chairs and the distant call of cattle. Then Lila looked at him, studying his face in the morning light. You could have left me there, she said quietly. Why didn't you? He met her gaze, steady and calm. Because sometimes doing nothing makes you part of the wrong side. She nodded slowly, then looked down at her hands. I don't know if I'll stay, she murmured. I don't even know where I'd go. Eli set down his fork, his tone gentle. You don't have to decide today. You've got time. Time's the one thing no one should take from you. Her eyes glistened as she looked out toward the open range, the endless stretch of freedom waiting beyond the fence. She wasn't ready yet, but she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safety. And for that moment, it was enough. Eli stood and walked to the doorway, watching the wind ripple across the tall grass. Lila joined him there, the sun warming her face. She looked at the vast land and then at him. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded, tipping his hat. "You don't owe me that either. But you're welcome." And as the morning stretched over the ranch, the two stood side by side, not as captor and captive, not as owner and possession, but as two souls trying to remember what it meant to be free.